My name's Belinda Carpenter. I'm an Associate Professor in the School of Justice in the Faculty of Law. Just doing some research now on female sex offenders and why they get a better rap and less punishment and more social acceptance than male sex offenders. So if a young teacher offends against, say, a 14-year-old boy, he's considered very lucky. Whereas if the reverse gender, so if it was a 24-year-old man and a 14-year-old girl, there would be considered a mandatory harm to that young woman. That mandatory harm discourse seems to disappear when the harmer is a woman and the victim, in inverted commas, is a young man. So we're very interested in investigating that, which is a huge silence around in academia, I think. So that's the first area. When you're a researcher at a university, you always have your fingers in a number of pies. So for me, I have my own research that I complete, that I do with colleagues in Australia and elsewhere. But I also have research that I supervise. So I have a number of PhD students as well that I supervise in my areas of expertise. And the other area is my increasing interest in sex and sex crimes. And so I started in an area when my PhD was on prostitution. I guess that's where I started in the issue of sex crimes, and I've just maintained an interest in that. The most recent being this area of female sex offenders. So I'm always interested in the people on the edges where we're not really looking that much at. So violent women, we don't look a lot at violent women, we don't look a lot at women who commit sex offences. So I'm very interested in pushing those boundaries and investigating the people who aren't the norm. And that's, I guess, where I'm most interested in looking at the moment. The sex offending work is far more, I guess it is esoteric in a way, because it's much more engaging with a debate about why we aren't interested in female sex offenders. But it's really about, it's trying to challenge public perceptions. It's really trying to engage with media perceptions about the fact that for some reason female sex offenders don't harm their victims, whereas male sex offenders do. And I don't mean don't harm, don't have sex with, don't kill, but there is a discourse that there isn't mandatory harm, that they're lucky boys, and there's very much a lucky boy discourse. Now, that may be what they are. I don't know yet, but I'm really interested in investigating not whether that's true or not, but in fact, why do we think that? Why is that not harmful when if the genders were simply reversed, it would be extremely harmful? I'm an academic at QUT, and all academics at QUT are employed to be teachers and also researchers. So as far as I'm concerned, it's an integral part of my job. So that's why I research at QUT. But I became an academic because I wanted to research. So for me, that's the most important thing I can do as a public intellectual, is to research and feed that information back to the public. I think, professionally, to be an academic at a university like QUT opens a huge amount of doors. I think we have very good working relationships with universities in England. One of my close colleagues is at Leeds University. QUT and Leeds University have a student exchange program. So QUT have really good relationships at a whole range of levels internationally, which are then very useful for me as a professional when I want to make those networks. The underlying trust and high regard is already there, and I just have to build on that. So I'm not starting from scratch. I'm always building on the QUT reputation. So that always makes it a lot easier. Research opens up so many doors. I mean, it gives you points of contact with people in a whole range of professions. So whilst my area is death investigation, I'm a social scientist, but I now have close research colleagues who are pathologists and lawyers and, counsellors. And so because it's multidisciplinary, I now speak a language with all of them, and we have close working relationships with incredibly different training, incredibly different levels of expertise, but now a high level of regard, trust and understanding between us. So for me, that's a huge benefit of researching internationally, with people that are just brilliant minds and live all over the place.